A lot of people say that. I remember in university and I would tell some guys like I'm a nurse and they'll be like, oh, do you want to take care of me? No. For what? How? No. Hi guys, my name is Yatiel and welcome back to Living Life with Your Favorite Nurse. So if you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe and join the family. And if you're one of my returning subscribers, welcome back. So today we are talking about nursing assumptions, what some people assume nursing is like, or some like nursing stereotypes. We're going to talk about them. I'm just going to kind of speak my mind on them. And yeah, that's basically it. So let's get started. So one thing that really doesn't help nursing stereotypes or assumptions is like a lot of these medical shows like Grey's Anatomy, Chicago Med, honestly I find is like pretty close, like a lot better than Grey's Anatomy is. I've never watched the show Nurses. I've watched like 2 episodes, but I really didn't like it, so I don't know. I can't compare it to that. But if I go off Grey's Anatomy, use Grey's Anatomy, it's really an awful depiction of like what a nurse's like work day is like, or really what it's like to work in a hospital. I remember like there was one episode, I don't know, like all the nurses were like sleeping with Dr. Salone, like a physician. Like it was just awful. It was just awful. Don't get me wrong, I love Grey's Anatomy, but a lot of people I think feel like a lot of these med shows really display what it's like to be a nurse, and a lot of them suck. It's not good. A lot of times they're just having personal issues. They're not really caring for the patients. They're not really doing anything. They're just here and there, talking to doctors, marrying doctors, falling in love with doctors. And that's one thing I actually heard when I was just talking to someone like after I finished school. Someone's like, oh, are you gonna marry a doctor? Like, oh, are there like any doctors you like? I was like, how does that even correlate to me being a nurse? Like, all I talk to the doctors about are the patient. I don't think I've ever spoken to a doctor about my personal life. I don't think I've ever spoken to a doctor more than like 2 minutes about like me, other than, oh, maybe this is where I went to school and things like that. I find in the shows, nurses and doctors are talking about their issues, their problems, who they broke up with, who they're seeing. Like, it's just like the relationship between them is so much different in the shows than it is in real life. Like, don't get me wrong, as nurses, like, we do speak in a friendly manner to the doctors, and they do so to us too. And like, you can have like a relationship, whether that's like talking about personal stuff with a doctor, but it's just honestly not the same way it is in the shows. Everyone obviously has their own personal relationships with people around them. Like, I am speaking for myself, but even just all the places I've worked with, you don't really see that many like nurses and doctors dating, going out for drinks. Like, yeah, like there's times when you have like social events like Secret Santa and stuff like that, when like people come together, but you don't see them going to the bar every night together. Like, who even has time for that? No one has time for that. So that's one thing that is just like completely off, completely just off. Another thing that a lot of people also say is like, oh, nursing is for women. Like, they're typically surprised when a nurse is a male. Like, sometimes they automatically think they're the doctor. Like, they just don't see them as the nurse. But like, I was in nursing school with a couple of guys. Obviously there was a lot more girls to guys, but people really shouldn't think that nursing is just for guys. Yes, in the beginning with Florence Nightingale, there was females, like females did the role of care, they did all those things, and the males were the doctors. But things are not like that now. There's nothing that makes nursing a female job to me. We put in catheters, we give injections, we take blood, we do labs, we do wound care. We just do so many things that aren't gender-based. Like, taking blood should not just be for a woman. Like, giving an injection is not a woman thing. Lifting a patient, honestly, I would say is more a male thing than a woman thing. But that's one thing I would say. It's not just a woman's job. It's male, female, whomever. It's just a job. but yes, you do see more women doing said job. Another assumption is that nurses are like flirty and like they have this kind of, I don't want to say a sexual manner, but a lot of people say that. I remember in university and I would tell some guys like I'm a nurse and they'll be like, oh, do you want to take care of me? No. For what? How? No. The shows don't help as well, because sometimes they're like really flirty and sexual. Even like the nursing costumes for Halloween are always like short and just sexualized as well. If you want me to be flirty as a nurse, I'm sorry, I can't. I could never. First of all, who is trying to be flirty at 6 in the morning? Who wants to be flirty? First of all, as a profession, you're not meant to be flirting, meant to be that type of way in your job. If you want to be like that in your personal life, awesome. Like, you can definitely be caring. Like, as a nurse, you are a caring person. You've chosen that profession. So it must mean you do like to care for others, but not in that manner. You like you shouldn't be touching, or you shouldn't be making statements, like inappropriate statements and all those type of things to your patients or anyone around you. For me, that's actually just unprofessional. But a lot of nurses don't have any time for flirting. A lot of patients will be like, oh, you're so cute, oh, you're so pretty, oh, thank you so much. Right now I'm half asleep, I don't know your name, I'm just trying to make sure you stay alive. That's about it. So no one has time to be saying, oh, you're so handsome, we should go out on a date. First of all, you can't even have that type of relationship with your patient, so there's no reason you should be flirting with them. There's the difference between care and flirtation and all that type of stuff. So no, nurses are not flirty, shouldn't be flirty, and all that type of stuff. If you want to flirt with a 70-year-old nurse who's about to retire, best of luck. Another assumption is that nurses don't need breaks, or like they don't do anything. First of all, I need a break. If anyone needs a break, we need breaks. There has been times I've gone through 12-hour shifts and I have not sat down. Being a nurse has allowed me to retain and hold my pee for 12 hours, which is so wrong and so bad for your body. But the fact is that there's so many times that there's just not enough time. There is just not enough time to sit down, and there's not enough time to eat, and there's not enough time to do anything else but care for your patients. So for one thing, like, so many different things that a nurse can be doing. Whether you work in the hospital, whether you work in the community, long-term care, you are busy. And the thing is, I've had experiences in all of those places, and unfortunately in all of those places I've missed my breaks and my lunches because you're just so busy. Whether you're in the hospital, you have labs to do, you have IVs to put in, you have people to get ready, you have discharges, you have teaching, like you have so many things. And honestly, it all depends on even the, let's say, the field that you're working in the hospital, whether you're working with mother baby, whether you're working in the ICU, whether you're working on the surgery floor. Like, the amount of things a nurse has to do, ooh, I have chills, is honestly, it's too much. So for one, when people are like, oh, you don't need a break, or nurses don't do anything, I want to your neck. Why? Because it's task overload. It's a lot. Like, for example, working in the community, having to do wound care and going to house to house to house to house to house to go and treat people in their home. And people honestly rely on them and need them basically to get through their day, whether it's to give them their cancer meds in their home, clean their wound, do all those type of things. So nurses need their breaks. Nurses are doing stuff. Nurses are busy. Please, if I ever hear that a nurse doesn't do anything, I will lose my mind. Another thing that irks me, but I don't hear it as much, but I feel like I heard it in the beginning of university when, like, I would tell people I'm doing nursing. People would say, like, oh, you want to be a doctor's assistant? Hell no. No to the no. I feel like TV shows don't help with this as well, because it kind of looks like the nurses rely on the doctors, kind of following them around. The TV shows don't help, and I guess like the perception of the doctor being in control, maybe knowing more, things like that, makes it feel or sound like a nurse would be the doctor's assistant, but that's really not how it is. There are things I have to do. There are things the doctor needs to do. At the end of the day, our common goal is our patient. So basically we have the same common goal of helping this patient. So there are things that the doctor will need to do for his practice or her practice, and there will be things that the nurse needs to do for her practice or his practice. At the end of the day, it's meant to just benefit the patient. Yes, there are orders that doctors will give. I know my patient is in pain, so I want to help my patient. So I will go to the doctor and say, I need meds for this patient. And the doctor will order this, order that, and I'll give it to the patient. But it's not a sense that I am the doctor's assistant. Honestly, I feel like I'm more the patient's assistant to an extent than really the doctor's assistant. For one, our practices are different in the sense that our schools are different. A doctor can't fire a nurse. A nurse can be fired by the College of Nurses, and a doctor can be fired by the, the College of Doctors, whatever you call them. At the end of the day, our practices are different, our disciplines are different. So it's not like in the shows when a doctor has fired nurses and done this and done that. We have our own, I can't remember the word, but this one could be a longer conversation, but it's not what people think it is. But I just feel like way back when it was like the doctors controlling the nurses before they had their practice, before they had their own schooling, that kind of perception came around, and like it has stayed in a lot of people that maybe don't know what nurses actually do. I think when you're in the hospital or when you actually need a nurse, which I pray no one ever needs, you're kind of actually able to see it more how they're different from each other and how no one is kind of no one's assistant, or how no one is really controlling one another. Another assumption that people also say is like maybe nurses didn't want to go to med school, or they couldn't go to med school, so they just like stuck with nursing. A lot of people honestly just want to be a nurse. And the reason why, for me, like I just want to be a nurse is because I like spending time with my patients. That being said, I'm not saying that doctors don't, but doctors come to us to know about the patient. Why? Because we're with them 8 to 12 hours a day. Doctors are seeing patients, seeing patients, seeing patients. They have a lot of people to see. That's their job. So they have less of the relationship with their patients because they have so many places to go, so many places to be. So who's actually with that patient all day? We are. So a lot of people honestly like that. Don't get me wrong, there's times in my life where I didn't want to go to med school and change my mind just because of how long it is, but it's not because I don't think I can do it. It's just because I just feel like I don't want to go through that process. But that's why, I'm doing my master's and all that other type of stuff. But it's an awful assumption to think that a nurse is only a nurse because they, one, can't make it through med school, can't afford med school, don't want to go to med school, or just things like that. Nurses have so many different reasons for being nurses. So I sometimes hate to hear people say it's like, oh, why don't you want to go to med school? I don't want to go to med school because I don't want to be a doctor. I want the doctors to be doctors, and I want them to do their role, and I want to do mine. But it's not because I can't, and it's not because I think that I wouldn't be able to make it. I would make a fabulous doctor, but that's not where I want to be. Another assumption or thing that people really don't realize is that there's so many other fields than just like working in the hospital. You can see a nurse anywhere. Honestly, you can see a nurse on a movie set. You can see a nurse in the jails. You can see a nurse in the community driving around her car to go to people's houses. You can see a nurse in the hospital. You can see a nurse in the government. You can see a nurse in so many different places. So it's just not hospital work. If you don't work in the hospital, it does not mean you are not a nurse. You're just a nurse not working in the hospital. You're just a nurse working in a different field. And even in the hospital, it's not just like hospital. There's so many different like fields in the hospital that you can work at. You can work in the NICU, you can work in the OR for surgery, then you can work on the surgery floor, then you can work in a merge. So it's just not like one thing. So that's why when people are like, oh, you don't work in the hospital? What do you do then? I'm just like nursing stuff that are not in the hospital. And lastly, the last assumption is that the nurse has to do whatever the patient wants. Although I said like, yes, I'm like the patient's assistant to an extent, to a medical extent, not the extent that I'm gonna go do their grocery shopping. I'm gonna go downstairs and get food for them. I'm not their assistant in that way. I'm there to help them in a medical fashion. So that means doing everything medically possibly that I can for them. That is in my scope, that I'm allowed to do and that I should do. I'm not their maid. Yes, something can happen. Maybe they want you to call a family member for them. Those are things I can do. But there's actually a lot of fields and discipline that actually do a lot of that social work that people actually need, that nurses actually don't do. Like in the TV shows, they'll show like a nurse helping with like a family issue and things like that. Yes, as a nurse I can help out to an extent, but I would actually call social work in. I would actually maybe call another discipline in to come and help, because that's the thing. I feel like a lot of people don't know all the different things that are out there, a lot of the different fields that actually help a patient opposed to just the doctor and the nurse. So I am there to help the patient. I am there to serve the patient in a medical fashion, but I'm not there to serve the patient as a butler or as a waiter. Another thing that people think is that nursing is easy. Oh my gosh. If nursing was easy, I wouldn't be as tired as I am. If nursing was easy, half of the class wouldn't get booted out for failing. If nursing was easy, we wouldn't have that awful math calculation exam every semester to make sure that you don't kill anyone with meds. Nursing is not easy. I still haven't gotten over all the sleep I lost in school. And don't get me wrong, like every program is hard, so they say. But nursing is something else. Take note that like the doctor has so many people to see. The doctor is not with your patient like they are in the shows, that they're just looking at the patient every second. The doctor is downstairs in their office doing the work they need to do. The doctor might be at one of their other places of work. You are meant to keep this patient alive. And you are really only meant to call the doctor if something really critical is happening, but you are expected to know what you're doing, know how to keep this person alive, maintain their health, and teach them, educate them, do whatever you can as their nurse, and really only call the doctor when it's an emergency, to be honest. At least where I've worked, speaking from where I've worked and what I understand of the hospital and things like that, like there's no reason for the doctor to be walking in the room every couple seconds. That's your job. That's your job as the nurse. So that's one thing when people say, oh, like nursing is easier, or they really don't understand. My heart. Come and do the job, please, and tell me if it's easy. Alright guys, so those are some assumptions and some things that people think about nurses and think about nursing. When I talk about it, my blood becomes hot. Wow. But I'm okay. But honestly, having assumptions is okay, but it's definitely important to educate yourself and not use those assumptions against people or think that your assumption is always right, because sometimes it's not. Especially when someone tells you it's not and you still keep that assumption. It's kind of annoying, but whatever. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I hope you learned something new. I hope you guys have a blessed week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and keep living life from your favorite nurse.